Peace, wellness, beautiful souls, magnificent beings. What if I told you that religion has failed humanity? And it's a matter of fact that religion is the number one reason that so many individuals on this earth are suffering. As you see behind me, Israel, the chosen people of God, dropping bombs on Iran, killing innocent men and children and women, as well as their destruction of Gaza, killing innocent men, women, and children, all in the name of their God and self-defense. Every individual has a right to defend themselves. In the case of Gaza, Israel had the right to defend itself. However, it has went far beyond the defense that it needed and has committed, in my opinion, genocide. And in a preemptive strike, they attack Iran. If you are the chosen people of God, doesn't God protect you? Wouldn't God protect you from anything that comes your way? And this is why my concept of God doesn't align with any of these religious institutions, any of these religious orders, because it makes no sense that you believe that you have an all-power God that's up in the sky that can control and determine whatever goes on, passively insert himself and passively restrain himself. Wouldn't he assert himself to protect you? And this goes for all religions. So allow us to jump in to this religious debate with this guy, Richard Dawkins. I don't necessarily agree with his concept of there not being any supernatural or any higher power. I know that there's a higher existence. I know that there's an intelligence that exists within all of us that is the source of all creation. This is the intelligence that many individuals have embodied into a figure and called that intelligence God. That intelligence is in everything that exists. It is not confined to one human being up in the sky passively watching the destruction of human life. And this is where I and the religious ones disagree. But allow us to jump in and check out some videos. We'll have some pro-religion and the God, how they represent God, and then we can have this other one. This first one is an individual that is not pro-religion, all right? So we'll allow him to speak. Let's bring him on to the table and let's listen to what he has to say.
I just ask our audience a question, first of all. If you'd raise your hands. How many of you believe in God? Okay, a forest of hands. So, Richard Dawkins, these people are deluded. Every single one of them.
Well, I fear that's right, yes. I would say it's rather like the phenomenon of the imaginary friend that children have and that comfort them and console them. But there's actually not the slightest shred of evidence that any kind of supernatural being exists. So I'm sorry to say, deluded, yes.
Deluded. How can so many people be wrong?
Well, there was a time when everybody believed that the world was flat. There was a time when everybody believed that the sun whizzed round the earth. People are very, very frequently deluded. And by the way, of course, there was a time when people believed in Zeus and Apollo, and in other parts of the world, they believed in Thor and Wotan.
We'll come back to him shortly, but we'll get some pro-religious individuals onto the screen and allow them to present their case. Where I disagree with this individual when he says up front that he doesn't believe in anything supernatural. As I stated earlier on, I'm not saying supernatural. I'm saying there is an intelligence that is indeed higher than any intelligence that you and I possess as a singular being. And that intelligence is within all of creation, everything, the animate and the inanimate. It is the source of all existence. And for me, that is the so-called God source. It is not tied into a religious figure who's up into a sky, who's passively watching and allowing things to happen, unspeakable things to happen, that he could step in and cease at any point in time. And it is to the degree of chauvinistic to always see this God as a he. The source of life is of all life. That source of life is the extension of the male and the female. So that source is in both male and female. That source is in everything that exists. That source is one. Its division is innumerable. So again, to confine it into one body and label it as God and to sexualize it as just being a male, again, is elementary thinking. We have to raise our thought. So allow us to bring on Ben, I think his name is Shapiro, and this other guy, don't really know his name. Let's allow him to speak.
Well, one of the things I think that's happened in the religious community is you see people who are brought up in religious homes and they're taught the stories of the Bible. They're never taught any deeper philosophy or theology that attaches to that. So they have sort of a children's eyes view of what God is and how to think about God. Sort of think of God still as the old man in the sky who's controlling things. What in your—
Allow me to interject real quick. So Ben Shapiro, the guy who is speaking, he is a Jew. He is a white ethnic Jew. Again, allow me to break it down. There is no race that is a Jewish race. A Jew is a religious identity. A Jew is an individual that practices Judaism. And within the practice of Judaism in today's world, they really rely on the Talmud, which says that Jesus is burning in excrement because they don't view Jesus as God, as the Son of God. They do not view him in any way. So again, these are supposedly the chosen people of God, the Jews. And you have a Christian nation that believes that Jesus is God, but yet they have 100% backing of a nation, Israel, that whose religious book, the Talmud, which he is alluding to, is talking about Jesus burning in excrement. You know what excrement is, right? Dung, poop, etc. So again, make that make sense. Allow them to continue.
your opinion is the most reasonable proof of God? What have you found to be the most convincing proof of God's existence?
Well, I think that those are two questions. For me, my favorite argument for the existence of God that I find the most compelling is a version of the cosmological argument, which goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Something can't just come into being from nothing.
I agree with what he stated right there. Again, I'm not going to keep these videos on long, but everything that exists has a cause. And this is why I said that the intelligence that is in everything that exists, the animate and inanimate, that intelligence, it never dies, it never goes away. It comes in the form of energy and frequency. And that intelligence is the intelligence that you have labeled as God within a singular being. But that intelligence is everywhere, and it cannot be confined to one single human being. It is the source of all beings, and it is the intelligence that's in everything that exists, that keeps everything that exists alive when it's an animate object. Everything that exists that is on the planet is from the source of intelligence that is the God force. If you are religious, if you're like me, not religious, but understand that the source is one, and the source is the cause and the creator of all things that exist. So allow us to dive into another one of these pro-religious thing. Now we have a brother coming up. Let's share him. Get him onto the deck. Let's get him going. All right.
You will never forget this. This is a bottle of water. I'm going to pour this out into this glass. So the act of pouring myself out automatically made me a father. Whatever is in this bottle is in this glass. So in the Hebrew language, this would be called Abba. So this is called the source. This is called the resource. So you are God's resource. He is your source. The Jehovah's Witnesses have a problem with you Christian people. They say Jesus cannot be God because he calls God Father, which means he must be less than God. What Christ was saying was this. He was saying, look, Jehovah is my source. So when they asked Jesus, show us the bottle, he said, what are you talking about? He that has seen the glass, you will never forget.
Again, these religious individuals, many of who are brilliant orators, many of who are able to bring forth an ideal that they've got from the Bible and extrapolate it out and put it into a context that is given smoothly. This doesn't in and of itself make them wrong. The actual fact that, again, the source of all life is intelligence. It is not confined to one individual in the sky who is passively looking upon everything that's going on this earth and throughout the universe and allowing the tragedies, the debauchery, the devastating death, the devastating violation of life of young kids who are sex trafficked, etc. There's no way logical that this makes any sense. But there are principles within the Bible, within the Quran, within all these books that they call holy, that if those principles are applied and lived up to, will allow individuals to have a very successful life. This doesn't mean that their particular God is up in the sky giving out favors to some and withholding favors from another. They have humanized the source of all life into a very I'm looking for that word, an individual that actually has a lot of bias, with this individual being the source of all things that are created. How can you be biased if you are the source of all creation? That's another question for another day. Allow us to bring this individual back on, and he'll speak about the religion. And let me mute him first so I can make sure where I want him to be at. Well, this is Jordan Peterson. I don't want Jordan up right. Well, we'll listen to Jordan right now. Let's listen to what Jordan has to say. All right.
Notion of whether we can know God exists. And the paradox is, in part, you can't know God. And so can you know that something exists that you can't understand? And the answer is, well, maybe that's why you only see God's back in some real sense, right? You get hints. And maybe you get hints if you open yourself up in the right way. And one of the ways you open yourself up in the right way is not to ask for what you want in the God is a celestial butler manner, but to ask how it is that you could transform yourself so that you could be a better agent of the divine will or something like that.
And then what do you find when you do that? When you embrace responsibility, what you find is meaning, which is a route to the divine.
Well, the secularists would say, well, without God, you can still find meaning in service to others. And I would say, yes, that's true. But the reason you find meaning in the service to others is because that's one step on the ladder to the divine. Well, Nietzsche said, God is dead. And what's going to happen?
Again, there's a lot of truth in what has been said in reference to the God figure that they say represent their particular religion. And again, my only disagreement is with the idea that this God is in the body, up in the sky, passively seeing over everything that exists. Now, some of the concepts that come forth from individuals who are God, who are religious, who identify a specific being, Christians, Jesus as their God, etc. They have many of them have concepts and explanations and great tools of self-development that actually help people. So I'm not against that. That is something that is necessary, something that is needed, something that is beneficial. It still doesn't make their vision and their theology of what God is true. It just makes the fact that what they're delivering based off what they view as being God has truth to it and is effective and can be and will be beneficial if implemented. Now, we're going to pull this one back up and allow him to speak. I might have to fast forward it.
People have believed in fairies and leprechauns. Everybody in this room, I would guess, knows what it's like not to believe in the God of some other religion. You know that if you happen to be born in the Middle East, you'd probably be Muslim. And people who are born in the Middle East believe equally fervently in their God. They can't both be right. There are so many different gods that people have believed in throughout history.
So what
They
people
all
believe is really an accident of geography.
Exactly right, yes.
Again, I agree with him in the sense that these religious institutions, these religious orders are largely based, again, on geography, largely based on tradition, largely based on what has been passed down to them. And there are great concepts, precepts, and tenets within religious orders. This doesn't mean that there is a God in the sky representing a particular religion. Like I said before, the chosen ones, according to the Christians, are the Jews, but the Jews deny Jesus. So how is that making sense for a Christian to claim that the Jews are the chosen of the God that they deny? It makes no sense at all. And this is why we must come to understand that religion has been the biggest obstacle to human unity, more than nationality, more than ethnicity, more than race. It's been the implementation of religion and the use of religion to cover the dirty, dangerous, and deadly deeds of individuals in nations who say they represent or are represented by a God, and they go out and commit all types of atrocities in the name of that God. And you are seeing it play out in real time today. And this is why we must come to understand that this type of rhetoric has been detrimental. Religion has done little to bring peace onto this earth. I would contend it has done more damage, far more damage, and caused far more death than virtually any other institution on the planet. And you say, well, that's not the religion's fault. Religion doesn't exist without the people who represent the religion. If no one represents the religion has no power at all. So the representatives of these religions are committing atrocities in the name of their religion. And it would seem that the God of these religions would definitely put a stop to that misrepresentation, being that the God is in the sky, passively being able to interject himself into any situation. Again, there are some religious concepts, precepts, tenets that, if applied, will change an individual's life. No doubt about it. But this doesn't mean that there's a God in the sky passively seeing over everything, handing out things to people he wants to hand out, withholding things from people who he wants to withhold, with all the death and destruction that is on this planet. Make that make sense. Again, leave your comments. We can debate civilly. I will not tolerate any foul language towards me, as I would not use foul language towards you. If you want to debate, let's debate the facts. Let's debate as intelligent, mature human beings, and allow our argument of our facts of the facts to determine who's right, who's wrong, or determine if there is some unity in some aspect that you and I can agree upon. Again, if you like the video, like, subscribe, please comment. Also, remember to follow me on Monte's fitness channel. On that channel on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, I have videos that you can follow along with me training my clients that you can do as your workout. On Tuesdays and Thursdays on that channel, I drop a lot of wellness information dealing with insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, menopause, autoimmune disease, heart, high blood pressure, insulin resistance. I might have said that before. Vitamin, minerals, supplements, hormonal balances, all those things, everything that you need to know in order to optimize your human organism. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining me. Peace.